What's up, YouTube? Today we're going to be building a high-performance compact computer using a Ghost S1 case. And my goal is to build a very high-performance computer in a small form factor. And the hardware will be a RTX 2080 Ti Intel i9-9900K. And I will be using a ROG Z390i motherboard. Let's dig in. Alright, so I have a 3M anti-static mat and bracelet, and a lot of people don't use them, but I don't want any possibility of shorting out the motherboard with static, so I decided to pull mine out and give it a use with this computer build. So first off, I'm going to take the processor, the Intel i9, out of its box. And I always like to wipe it down with some isopropyl alcohol. I'll show you how I do that. So I'm just going to get a little Q-tip here, and I'm going to put some isopropyl alcohol on it. And I'm just going to wipe the surface just to make sure it's clean. Now I'm going to put the chip out onto the side and let it air dry. And next off, there's going to be a cap over where your processor is going to go, and you're going to want to pull this off. And don't throw this out, because if you ever warranty out the board or remove it, a lot of times they won't accept it if you don't put this over the socket, so you don't damage any of the pins. So you're going to want to unlatch this here and pull it back. And now we're going to take the processor. And there's two little indent little markings right on the side. And you want to make sure that they line up to these two little stubs inside the socket. You want to be careful putting it in there. You don't want to damage any of the pins. So I'm going to put over this cap. You're going to want to latch it down. Now next, I'm going to flip the board over onto this side. And I did put a little standoff there that is included in the box with the motherboard. And this is for a M2 SSD. And there is also a spot in the front of the board, but I plan to add another SSD, so I want to start off putting my main one at the back, so I don't have to pull the whole board out again to put a second drive in. So I'm going to put it into its slot. Alright, so the board is pretty much ready to be put into the case. So now we're going to install the RAM sticks. So there's a little plastic piece in the connector, and you want to make sure that matches up with the one on the RAM stick. So you're like putting the stick in its right orientation. So I'm going to first install this stick right here. And you want to press down until it clicks. And then this will be the second one. Okay. Alright, so next I'm going to install the backplate for the cooler onto the motherboard. So this is the Intel backplate that's included with my ROG 240mm cooler, AIO cooler. And so you want to make sure all these little standoffs are towards the inner part. And so you just want to drop it down on the motherboard. You just want to make sure each standoff goes into its hole. Now I'm going to turn the board over. And then there's these standoffs that you want to screw into the threads that are poking through the motherboard now from the backplate that we just installed. You just want to tighten these up. and you want to make sure they're all tight. And don't over tighten them, just make sure they feel like snug. And also that's the M2 SSD slot, the main one, the first one. That's the front slot that I was talking about in the earlier part. Alright, so the motherboard is ready to be put into the case. So there's going to be 4 screws on the bottom of this S1 case, and you're going to want to unscrew all 4, and that will allow you to slide these panels out. And first you got to remove the top grill. Slide the case down a little bit, and slide this one off here. Now I'm going to take the motherboard, and well, first you want to just make sure this cable's out of the way. But you take the motherboard here, and it's going to be a very tight fit, so I want to put it towards with the I/O shield in first. And there's little standoffs on the case that the motherboard sits on at all 4 corners. So I'm going to take one of the screws that is included with the case and begin screwing the motherboard down. Now here is the GPU riser cable. You want to pull the cap off the connector, and you're going to want to plug it right into the PCI slot here. And also there's a little marking, of course, while it's already positioned, but just want to get the connector in there. Make sure it's all the way down. Now, the motherboard is in the case, and we could begin rolling through. Alright, so now I'm going to put the 2080 Ti GPU inside the case. And there is 2 screws at the rear of the case that you want to unscrew, and it has a little plate that locks down the GPU. And you just want to remove that. I've already removed it and put it to the side, but I'll go ahead and put this in here. And then there's a little locking mechanism here. Just press that down. Okay, so I just put the power supply in. There's 4 screws here, and they just screw to the back of the power supply from underneath. So, and with the harnesses, the original harnesses that come with it are pretty long. I know there's a lot of custom shops you could order shorter cables. I might end up sleeving my own set that are shorter, but in the meantime, I was able to tuck a few behind the power supply. The PCIe harness I was able to tuck behind there. And then also the main motherboard power connector. It's pretty long and you can't really fit it that well. So there's a cutout on the spine of the case, and I just kind of folded it in a way so it pushes through the other side of the case. You could see that there. That's really the cleanest I probably could make it look with the original cables, because they're just way too long for this case, and going with custom sleeve cables will be a lot cleaner looking in my opinion. So you got the 4 screws there. This is for the power button and the power LED, and with this case I guess they're too short. I'm not sure if I got a bad batch or if it's just to where the pins are positioned on this board specifically, but I'll have to end up extending them so it reaches the pins on this other side of the motherboard. Okay, so now I'm gonna put a pea-sized little blob in the center of thermal paste. I'm using thermal Grizzly Kryonaut. So now with the cooler right here, I'm gonna wipe it with the alcohol a little bit, make sure it's clean. making sure it's air dried. So now I'm going to begin to put the cooler on. It goes right over the standoffs. Now there's these little thumb screws that you want to screw in. But you just want to make sure they're nice and snug. You don't want to over tighten them. You can see I'm not going around tightening like this. I'm doing it across diagonally. Okay, so that's it for the AIO mounting, and then you just have to go ahead and plug all the wires into their correct slots on the motherboard and into the fan splitter that's on the water pump itself. Okay, so all the AIO cooler wires are plugged into the correct slots on the motherboard, and depending on motherboards, they're going to be probably positioned differently, so you'd have to look in your manual to see which connector is which on your motherboard. But I have mine all plugged in now, so I could go ahead and put the side panels on. Actually, GPU side panel is already on, so it's really just this other side I have to slide on. Alright, so I'll go ahead and I have to put the 4 screws in underneath, and I'm going to leave the radiator exposed for now. I might get their top hat for it, or I might 3D print my own shroud that goes over the radiator on my 3D printer. But yeah, this is it, and it's pretty light, compact, and high performance. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned a thing or two or more from this video, and just like and subscribe. Thanks.